Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Today I am going to post a pre-recorded lecture on Things Fall Apart, and this is going to be a whole series because I have many lectures that have been pre-recorded on Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. So these lectures were recorded in 2020 when COVID came, and I had to pre-record these lectures to be shared later with my students. Some of the things that I say in the upcoming clip will not actually make sense to you because I'm talking to my students, the ones who were actually being taught by me at that time. So ignore all of those things, but I think in general this material is something that I share with my students even after corona is over and they find it helpful. So if you find it helpful as well, it will give me a lot of happiness. And also I think that it will motivate me to post more and make more such videos. So let me know if you find this helpful. I'm going to create a playlist for this whole series on Things Fall Apart. And if you want me to kind of elaborate on a certain aspect of the novel Things Fall Apart, then I would love to do that as well. But for now, I'm going to post the videos that I already have. So this clip is going to be followed by the whole lecture on the first 3 chapters of Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart. So see you on the other side. Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you are well and that you're doing fine. Welcome to our first lecture on LMS, and I really hope that you guys get to learn as much from it as possible and that it is a very edifying experience for you all. First of all, we are going to start with our novel. We are done with our poetry, so we are going to start with our novel, that is Things Fall Apart. Okay? And in this chapter, in this lecture, I'm going to deal with 3 chapters, chapter number 1, 2 and 3. In each lecture I will be dealing with 3 chapters, and only in one of the lectures I deal with 4 chapters, and you will see it is mentioned there. So let's start with the novel. So first of all, this novel is written by Chinua Achebe. He is a Nigerian author, and he's a Nobel Prize winner as well. And not only is he a fiction writer, but he also writes non-fiction, and he also writes criticism. Okay? So he's very well known for his criticism of colonialist fiction and his and also for his post-colonial criticisms as well. The chapter that I've asked you to study, which is named Appropriating the Word, in that book called A Cambridge Introduction to Post-Colonial Literatures in English, in that chapter there is some criticism included by Chinua Achebe as well. So he was a very active post-colonial critic and writer and theorist. So he had a lot of opinions about a lot of post-colonial aspects, and you must check them out. One of his most important and most well-known piece of post-colonial criticism is known as An Image of Africa, and it's an essay, and it basically discusses Joseph Conrad's novel Things Fall Heart of Darkness. Joseph Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness, and he basically criticizes how Conrad subscribes to that colonialist mindset in the book. So it's a very interesting read. You must read it. So coming to this novel at hand, let's go to the first chapter. Okay, so the first chapter, it basically, I would love to start with reading the first paragraph of this first chapter, and so that we are able to have a proper start and we know where the author wants us to start from, and then we can move on to other criticism and other analysis. Okay, so I'm going to read the first paragraph and then we are going to move on to further analysis. Chapter 1. Okonko was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievements. As a man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Amelins the cat. Amelins was the great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten, from Umofia to Mobino. He was called the cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonko threw in a fight, which the old man agreed was one of the fiercest, since the founder of their town engaged a spirit of the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. Now, this paragraph, as I have mentioned it before as well to my morning students, that this paragraph is very, very, very important, and it basically shows us the mastery of Achebe's craft. Okay, because it's such a small little paragraph, yet if you read this paragraph carefully, you get to know that he has introduced all the basic arguments and all the basic elements of his novel here. Okay, because I've read the novel multiple times, so I'm better able to see how he has given the best introduction he could give to Things Fall Apart. This paragraph is not vague, it's very to the point. It has a very clear-cut introduction to our protagonist, and he has also shed light on all the important features of the society, of the Igbo society or the Umofian society that we are talking about. So सबसे पहले तो ये है कि he says that Okonko was well known throughout the 9 villages and beyond. So we get to know that this society that we are dealing with, it was not just one individual village, but rather a communion, or you can say a collection of villages working together in an overall or a combined structure. Okay, so it was a complicated kind of a society where 9 villages, they worked together and they were bound together by some values or whatever societal norms or customs they had. Okay, and then later on in the novel we will get to see why those 9 villages were joined together and what was the reason, okay, for their union. And the next line says that his fame rested on solid personal achievement. So we get to know that our protagonist, he was a man who had worked very hard and who had strived very hard in order to achieve his fame. Okay? He was a self-made man and he had achieved it through hard work. Okay? Solid personal achievements, yani he hadn't inherited it, or he was not just lucky or something. He had actually worked very, very hard for it. ठीक है, तो ये भी हमें एक बहुत important बात अपने प्रोटैगनिस्ट के बारे में बता रहे हैं, और जो कि हम पूरे नॉवल में देखते आएंगे. ठीक है. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing Amelins the cat. So that shows that when he was very young, ठीक है, 18 is a very young age, he had brought honor to his village. यानी कि he was very, very famous. He was he not only was a self-made man, but also he was like everyone beyond the villages, even beyond the 9 villages. Even people knew him and people were proud of him. He was the pride of his village. Okay. And who was Amelin the cat? That was another wrestler, okay, who had not been defeated for such a long time. Okay, he was a champion. Okay, Amelin's the cat. And Okonko beat him to this wrestling match, and that was the basic, that was the beginning of his fame. Okay. And it was this man that Akonko threw in a fight. Okay. And you also get to see that the last line is very, very significant, because we get to know that the writer says that it was this man that Akonko threw in a fight, which the old man agreed was one of the fiercest since the founder of their town engaged a spirit of the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. Now this is very important, because we get to see that the old men, these old men that are referred to, they are also very important, because their opinion is obviously important. That is why they are mentioned here by the author. ठीक है, and we will get to see why these old men are important. ये भी बहुत ज़्यादा important है. अभी तो शायद आपको वेग लग रहा होगा ना कि हाँ, people said, the writer could have said, the people said that, you know, it was the best fight that they had ever witnessed. No, but he says that the old men agreed. So that means that these old men, they were of a huge importance. ठीक है, and they say that it was the best since the founder of their town engaged a spirit of the wild. So they say that, you know, it was the best fight ever since the founder, yani ke their ancestor, the person who laid the foundation of their village or their, you know, community, he had actually, he was also known for his wrestling capabilities, and he was known to have defeated a spirit of the wild. इसका क्या मतलब है? A spirit of the wild can be a lion, it can be a tiger, you know, and for 7 days and 7 nights. तो क्या उनके वहाँ पे मिथ मशहूर थी, यानी कि उनकी एक कहानी क्या मशहूर थी अपने ही बारे में, अपने ही ancestors के बारे में, that their ancestor had actually engaged in a fight with a lion or a tiger, any spirit of the wild, for 7 days and 7 nights. They had remained entangled in a fight, and after that fight, you know, their ancestor their founder had actually come out victorious, and that actually, you know, established his you can say domination over that area, and that had led him to establish their village. Now this is very, very, very important, because we will get to see all the links that we are going to explore later on. Okay? And after you have read the whole novel, I want you to read this paragraph again, okay, in order to make better sense of it. You still can make sense of it, I know, but you will understand its significance after you have known the complete story. And it might sound a bit weird to you that the founder of their town had engaged with a lion in a fight, blah blah blah. This may sound a bit odd to you, but we also have these kinds of, you know, tales and these kinds of stories attached to our histories as well. ठीक है, जैसे कि there is this Mughal emperor, Babur. Okay, he was the first Mughal emperor, and it's well known about him that he actually had fought with a lion, and he actually ripped the lion's jaw apart with his bare hands. Okay, so obviously it is not, I don't think that it's possible. It might be true, it might not be true, but still people yeah, like, it's very well known. Okay, so it's not very unlikely that people have these details, these made up stories, or you can say myths about their own origin, because it helps them you know, glorify their themselves and their past. Okay, every community in the world, they have this habit of glorifying themselves to have this better sense of their own past, okay, their own history. It's very, very important. Okay, so let's get back to the novel. So in this book we get to see that he was very this Akonko, he was a well-known man, okay, and he's a renowned warrior, okay, and he's not only a warrior, but also he is क्या उसे कहते हैं, he has stable social and financial status as well, and he is also a bit impatient, because the author says that he did pounce on people quite often. ठीक है. So when you read the third paragraph, you get to see that we are given with a description of Konko, and we get to see how he is described as a very impatient and a very quarrelsome kind of a person. Okay, and he was just a no nonsense kind of a person, a workaholic who kind of worked all the time to get where he wanted to be. And then another thing that is mentioned is Okonko's father. Okay, and Okonko's father is known as Anoka. Okay, his name was Anoka, and he was very different from Okonko. Okay, read the entire difference that we have, okay, between Okonko and Anoka. Okay, unlike Okonko, Anoka is not a highly ambitious man. Instead, he is quite artistic in his nature and loves to play his flute and indulge in merrymaking. When you read the whole क्या उसे कहते हैं paragraph, you will get to see that he is mostly, he's very happy when there is harmattan blowing. See what harmattan is, okay? And he enjoys bringing his friends home and just, you know, drinking wine with them and playing his flute. He was very well known for playing his flute, okay? People knew him for being a musician. So यहाँ पे इसकी थोड़ी सी description I've added in the slides too, that he was tall but very thin and had a slight stoop. He wore a haggard and mournful look, except when he was drinking or playing on his flute. Okay, this also shows that this person, this Anoka, although he's shown to be a very unambitious kind of a person and a very non-serious person, he still wore a haggard and mournful look. इसके बारे में हम बाद में, when we will discuss psychoanalysis on this book, on these characters from a psychoanalytic perspective, this line is very significant there. अगर कोई मुझे बता सकता है कि क्यों significant है, उसको इनाम भी मिलेगा. अगर मुझे कोई ईमेल करे और मुझे बताया कि ये वाली लाइन किस तरह ये important क्यों है, ठीक है, from a psychoanalytic perspective. He was very good on his flute, and his happiest moments were the 2 or 3 moons after the harvest, when the village musicians brought down their instruments hung above the fireplace. So, in complete contrast to Okonko, he is shown to be a man who is very unambitious. Again, I would use this word, okay? And he doesn't really care about making money or anything. You will see ahead, and all he cares about is his flute. And the happiest he's happiest when all the musicians come to the village and they get to play their flute together. That was his passion, actually, the flute playing. Anoka loved it all. He loved the first kites that returned, and the dry season, and the children who sang songs of welcome to them. Now, this seems very normal, but if we get to look at it closely, we get to see that this dry season, it actually shows the time when people couldn't do any plantation, or they couldn't harvest anything. And Anoka, he enjoyed it all, okay? Unlike other people who were worried that they couldn't plant anything, they couldn't get any, they couldn't cultivate anything. Anoka को वो चीज़ अच्छी लगती थी, क्यों? क्योंकि सारे फारिग बैठे होते थे. उसका होता था कि everyone should be free, everyone should be enjoying and merry making, blah blah blah. Okay, so, and then he says he would remember his own childhood, how he had often wandered and wandered around looking for a kite sailing leisurely against the blue sky. As soon as he found one, he would sing with his whole being. So मतलब उसका बस यही काम था कि बस गाने गाना और enjoy करना life को, ठीक है? So that's what he used to do. Now keep this in mind, that he was very different from Okonko. बल्कि हमें ये देखना चाहिए कि how Okonko was very different from his father, because obviously his father came first, ठीक है? So we can't say that Okonko, because we will get to know that Okonko was this way, the way he was, it was because of his father's personality, ठीक है? So we have to keep that in mind. Okay. Okay, then we see that he says that that was years ago, when he was young. The Anoka, the grown up, was a failure. This is very, very important. He was poor and his wife and children had barely enough to eat. People laughed at him because he was a loafer and they swore never to lend him any money. Any more money because he never paid back. तो क्या होता था कि मतलब शुरू में when you're young and when you don't have any responsibilities, these things are often tolerated, ठीक है, by the society. The society doesn't care much, ठीक है, because you don't have to earn money, you don't have to do anything, so you can just, you know, dilly-dally and just play around. But when it comes to providing your family and you're not able enough to do that, then people start looking at you with disgust. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे भी हमें ये देखने को मिलता है कि अनोका, because of his personality, because of his non-serious attitude about life, he was a target of you know, जैसे कहते हैं कि ridicule for what he was. ठीक है, Anoka's reckless attitude in his youth led him to be a complete failure in his later years. ठीक है, ये तो हमें पता है. He was constantly mocked and looked down upon in society because of being completely bankrupt. But Anoka was such a man that he always succeeded in borrowing more and piling up his debt. ठीक है, तो लोग कहते थे कि we would never give him money, but at the end of the day they would, because Anoka, he was very he was very good at convincing people. He was very good at, you know, talking, because he had this artistic nature to him. ठीक है, तो वो आराम से लोगों को कन्विंस कर लेता था और उसके बाद उनसे पैसे ले लेता था, but he would never give them back the money. This shows that अच्छा okay. Konko was combative in nature and loved to engage in warlike activities, whereas Anoka didn't like war at all. Anoka was never happy when it came to wars. He was in fact a coward and could not bear the sight of blood. ठीक है, वो कहता था कि war ना ही हो तो बेहतर है. ठीक है, he was a pacifist. ठीक है, whereas Konko, उसको आप देखिएगा कि he is always ready to fight. He is always ready to engage in violence. शुरू में ही, बल्कि the starting paragraph, उसी में ही वो violence उसका हमें नज़र आता है कि how he is very happy and very good at being violent. When Anoka died, he had taken no title at all and he was heavily in debt. ठीक है, तो यानी कि जब वो मरा तो he was like in Omofian society it was very, very important to have a title. ठीक है, if somebody didn't have a title they were considered a nobody. ठीक है, you can compare this with the Greek society as well. ठीक है, in Athens people who didn't have any titles, they were not allowed to vote. ठीक है, वहाँ पे democracy थी, but those people who had titles or those people who belonged to the aristocracy, they were allowed to vote. बाकी सब लोग नहीं vote कर सकते थे. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे भी यही समझ लें कि people who didn't have any title, they were considered nobodies and people really didn't like to talk about them. ठीक है, और when this person Anoka died, तो उसके ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा कर्ज था. ठीक है, and he wondered then that his son Konko was ashamed of him. ठीक है, उसने सुना होगा लोगों को तो कहते हुए उसको अनोका के बारे में बातें करते हुए. So he always hated his father. ठीक है, Konko को बहुत बुरा लगता था अपना बाप for being a failure that he was. Konko despised Anoka because he had always witnessed his father being humiliated by society. ठीक है, okay. Now we get to see how this hatred proves to be a very important element in in actually turning a Konko into a person that he is. This hatred he has for him drives the Konko to strive to be the exact opposite of what his father is. Again, a very important point from the psychoanalytic perspective. आप इसको ज़रूर देखिए. The struggle to be unlike his father as much as possible will dominate his life. The last paragraph of the chapter describes Konko's character in detail. ठीक है, notice how the contrast between him and his father is even more pronounced here. ठीक है, आप उसको अच्छी तरह से पढ़ें and you can see कि किस तरह से वो बिल्कुल opposite है. Okay. The second chapter is very, very important. ठीक है, and what happens in it that we get to see the pivotal point which around which the whole story will revolve. ठीक है, तो हम देखते हैं कि क्या होता है इसमें. So the second chapter starts with an ominous beckoning. A Conco heard the Ojin of the town piercing the still air. ठीक है, Ojin क्या होता है ये देखिए. ठीक है, and Ojin is it's an Igbo word. ठीक है, ये English word नहीं है. Anything that is written in a in this italics तो उसमें वो English का word नहीं होता. ठीक है, तो आप ये देखें कि why Achebe has borrowed this word from his own language. ठीक है, why, what's the point of adding this here. ठीक है, अच्छा, so there is this Ojin being wrong, और सब लोग हैरान परेशान हो जाते हैं कि why, what has happened. ठीक है, the second chapter of the second paragraph of the chapter comments on the superstitious nature of belief the people of Umofia had. Read it carefully. ठीक है, इसमें आप देखें कि they had this fear of the night, they had this fear of a snake. They didn't even call a snake a snake. ठीक है, उनको पता था कि अगर हम snake का नाम लेंगे तो it will appear. तो वो कभी भी नहीं लेते थे, and things like that. So we get to see the kind of society Umofia was. The reason for Ojin's cry, the murder was the murder of an Umofian woman by a person from a neighboring village, Mabino. Mabino का नाम हमने पहले भी सुना है. ठीक है, in the first ever paragraph we get to see we get to hear about Mabino. ठीक है, it was a neighboring village. So in that neighboring village somebody had actually murdered an Umofian woman, and this had actually agitated the people of Umofia because they thought that their honor had been targeted. ठीक है, यहाँ पे वैसे होता है ना कि if somebody is killed from one tribe, then the whole tribe becomes agitated. ठीक है, इसी तरह से वहाँ पे भी they were very worried about all this. The sons of wild animal have dared to murder a daughter of Umofia. ठीक है, इस तरह से वो वहाँ पे जो अनाउंसमेंट कर रहा होता है वो बंदा, वो सारे लोगों को बता रहा होता है कि this has happened and we have now to take action. ठीक है, तो हमें अब कुछ ना कुछ करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे and then the author says an ultimatum was immediately dispatched to Mabino asking them to choose between war and okay, let me just bold it. Between war on the one hand and on the other the offer of a young man and a virgin as compensation. ठीक है, तो उन्होंने कहा कि या तो हमारे साथ जंग करो या फिर you have to give us one boy and a girl. ठीक है, and then we will let you go, otherwise you have to bear the consequences. So the people of Mabino, they obviously chose the latter because they didn't want to engage in war. ठीक है, so उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं आप ये एक लड़का और एक लड़की ले ले and हमें माफ़ करें. And why didn't they want to engage in war? क्योंकि they knew that fighting with Umofia was not a good idea, because Umofia, the people of Umofia, they were very very warlike. ठीक है, and they were fierce fighters. ठीक है, so they didn't want to provoke them in any way. तो उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं प्लीज़ आप हमें माफ़ करें. तो यहाँ पे again the writer says that Umofia was feared by all its neighboring neighbors. It was powerful in war and magic, and its priests and medicine medicine men were feared in all the surrounding countries. So in all surrounding country हमें ये बात जहन में रखनी है कि these people on the one hand they were very practical. ठीक है, they were very very practical. We get to see that, but on the other hand they are also again talking about magic and क्या उसे कहते हैं medicine और इस तरह की. That shows that this is the kind of the nature that these people had. ठीक है। अब इसमें ये बात नहीं है कि दीज पीपल वर एक्सट्रीम, लाइक दीज पीपल वर टोटली एरोगेंट, उनको नहीं पता था कि अगर आपने एक सोसाइटी में सर्वाइव करना है तो आपको किस तरह रहना होगा, बट एट द सेम टाइम दीज पीपल हैड वेरी बैकवर्ड पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज़ एज वेल, ठीक है। अब ज़ाहिर है वो समझते थे कि हमारे पास कोई ऐसी मेडिसिन है, ऐसे कोई नुस्खा है जिसकी वजह से सारे हमारे से डरते हैं, बट ऑब्वियसली असल बात ये थी कि दे वर वेरी वेरी these were warrior tribes anyway. So क्या होता है, और when they are about to give these options to the people of Mbino, who do they send? They send Akonko. तो यहाँ से भी हमें पता चलता है कि Akonko का जो उसका स्टेटस था सोसाइटी में, how important it was and how he was looked at in society. As decided in the contract, two people, a young boy and a girl, ठीक है, were brought into the village. जो लड़का था उसका नाम था Achebe, and he is a very very important character. Achebe was brought into the village, ठीक है, and जब वो घर आ जाता है तो फिर हम देखेंगे कि why Achebe is such an important character. और फिर क्या होता है, जब वो आ जाता है तो क्या होता है कि सब लोग ये डिसाइड करते हैं, ख़ास तौर पे एल्डर्स, और उनको नदीची भी कहते हैं, ठीक है, दिस इज ऑल्सो नाइजीरियन वर्ड, ठीक है, नॉट एन इंग्लिश वर्ड. तो दे डिसाइडेड दैट बिकॉज कॉन्को हैज़ ब्रॉट दिस बॉय इन, तो क्या होगा कि ही विल बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द अपब्रिंगिंग ऑफ दिस बॉय एज वेल, ठीक है. तो उसको कहते हैं इसको अपने घर ले जाओ, ठीक. कॉन्को वॉज देयरफॉर आस्क्ड ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ the clan to look after him and the interim, and so for 3 years Achebe lived in a Konko's household, ठीक है. So we get to know कि आगे क्या होगा Achebe के साथ, how important a character he is and blah blah blah, ठीक है. And since Achebe is to live at Akonko's household, the writer zooms in to focus on the way Akonko ran his family affairs. So far we have come to know that the protagonist as he is known in the society. Now we will get to see how he behaves inside his home, because that's also important, ठीक है. एक इंसान का तभी आपको पता चलता है जब उसको आप एक पर्सनल लेवल पे उसके घर में देखते हैं, ठीक है. So we get to see how he is presented at his home. और वो घर पे किस तरह का इंसान था, ठीक है. जिस तरह का वो बाहर था उस तरह का ही वो घर पे भी था. Akonko ruled his household with a heavy hand. His wives, especially the youngest, lived in perpetual fear of his fiery temper, and so did his little children. यानी कि हर कोई उससे डरता था क्योंकि कोई पता नहीं किस वक्त Akonko को गुस्सा आ जाए और वो कोई चीज़ उठा के फेंक दे, ठीक है. Perhaps down in his heart, Akonko was not a cruel man. Now this is very very important, ठीक है. शायद वो इतना बुरा नहीं था, शायद वो इतना जालिम और इतना बेरहम नहीं था, but his whole life was dominated by fear. The fear of failure and of weakness, ठीक है. क्या था कि because he imagine his childhood कि आपका बाप है and he is a drunkard, ठीक है, and he is a failure. घर पे खाने के लिए कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है. लोगों के ताने आपको मिल रहे हैं all the time, आपके बाप को, आपकी पूरी फैमिली को, ठीक है. and this person has so many debts as well, ठीक है. तो हर रोज़ कोई ना कोई आके आपसे कर्ज मांग रहा है वापस, ठीक है. So how humiliating a childhood that must be, ठीक है. Every child wants their parents to be the utmost perfect examples, right? But अनोका, जैसे कि आपको पता है कि he was no such man, no such role model, ठीक है. तो अनोका उल्टा ही हिसाब था उसका, ठीक है. So he Akonko had obviously in a very early stage in his life he had decided that he's not going to be like his father. He is going to be very successful, he will be respectable in a society. तो पूरी उसका दिमाग में हर वक्त ये चलता रहता था कि what if I am considered to be a failure as well, ठीक है. What if people think of me as a failure? He didn't want to be a failure in any way at all, ठीक है. So that is why his life was dominated by fear. तो उसने ये दिमाग में अपने बना लिया था कि in order to be a successful man I have to be very very strong. और strength का उसने मैयार क्या रखा हुआ था? गुस्सा, कि हर वक्त मुझे गुस्सा चढ़ा रहे, मुझे कोई ये कहे भी ना कि मैं मेरे पास कोई इमोशन है या so he had just made up this whole mind about being strong. Strength means to be very very angry and to be very very savage all the time. ठीक है, तो उसने कहा कि ये ना हो कि मुझे जिस तरह का मेरा बाप था उसी तरह मुझे भी लोग ट्रीट करें जिस तरह मेरे बाप को ट्रीट करते थे. ठीक है, यू कैन रीड दिस लाइन्स. ठीक है, that where it mentions that from his childhood he actually had seen whatever was happening with his father and things like that, right? तो इसको आप पढ़िए कि why he was dominated by this fear. Acha, and another thing that you have to keep in mind, these lines are very important. Even as the little boy, he had resented his father. ठीक है, as a little boy, this is very very important again from a psychoanalytic perspective. इसको अच्छी तरह से देखें. He had resented his father's failure and weakness. Even now, he still remembered how he had suffered when a playmate had told him that his father was Akbala. Now, Akbala is actually Akbala means an old woman. ठीक है, तो उसने मतलब किसी लड़के ने उसको कह दिया, उसके किसी फ्रेंड ने, कि तुम्हारा बाप जो है ही इज़ एन ओल्ड वुमन और तो कोई काम शाम करता नहीं है, तो मतलब ही इज़ वीक लाइक एन ओल्ड वुमन. तो उसको ये बात इतनी ह्यूमिलिएटिंग लगी ना कि उसको लगा कि अच्छा यू नो आई हैव टू बी वेरी वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग एंड वेरी वेरी you know violent and savage like I mentioned before, because अगर मैं ज़रा सी भी स्ट्रेंथ नहीं शो करूँगा तो आई विल बी कॉल्ड एन अकबाला. ठीक है, आई विल बी कॉल्ड फेमिनिन. तो उसके दिमाग में एक तो वीकनेस को तो वो डिस्पाइज करता ही था, उसके साथ साथ आप ये देखिएगा कि ख़वातीन के बारे में भी उसके बहुत ज़्यादा बुरे ख्यालात थे, जस्ट बिकॉज हिज फादर वॉज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड एन अकबाला एंड हैंस ही हैड इक्वेटेड femininity with weakness and weakness with humiliation. ठीक है, so we will explore this further in our lectures later on. That was how Okonko first came to know. अच्छा, यहाँ तो ये सारा कुछ हो गया. And so Okonko was ruled by this passion to hate everything that his father had loved. ये इतना important है. You need to focus on this. One of those things was gentleness and another was idleness. उसने कहा मेरा बाप जो भी करता था that was wrong. ठीक है, we will also discuss whether that's true or not. To what extent do we accept that, right? कि वाकई उसका बाप जो सब कुछ जो भी उसमें क्वालिटीज़ थी वो बुरी थी या नहीं बुरी थी. तो we can discuss that too. Okay. Okay, I have discussed all these things in detail. This one is important. This shows us the kind of meritocratic society Mafia was, where physical strength and financial well-being of an individual was used to gauge their social standing. So I discussed that already. Okay. During the planting season, Okonko worked daily on his farms from cock's crow till until the chickens went to roost. He was a very strong man and rarely felt fatigue, but his wives and young children were not as strong, and so they suffered. But they dared not complain openly. तो आप ये देखें कि because of his temperament and because of his passion to be called strong, मतलब उसका एक ही ख्वाब था कि मुझे सब लोग strong कहें. तो ये इस पैशन की वजह से he worked like crazy. मतलब he became a workaholic कि बस मैंने काम करना है. और उसकी वजह से because he was physically very strong, he was a wrestler. तो बाकी उसके जो वाइफ्स थी और उसके जो बच्चे थे उनको भी उसी तरह वो काम करने पे लगाए रखता था. And because of that they used to be very scared of him, and they couldn't even complain, right? Okonko was so madly driven by his fear of failure that he hardly ever noticed how hard he was on his family members, especially his son Navoy. Now Navoy is also a very important character in this whole story. Chapter 3. ठीक है, तो इसमें चैप्टर 3 के शुरू में ही ऑरेकल का जिक्र है. तो we will see what an oracle was. ठीक है, और ऑरेकल का रोल क्या है सोसाइटी में. Who is Akbala? ठीक है, all these questions you have to answer. For what purpose does Anoka go to Akbala, and what advice does she have to give to him? ठीक है, this is also very important. Read the whole instance. Make sure to make the connection between the advice and the belief system of Igbo people. ठीक है, आपको ये क्वेश्चन आ सकता है, so kindly read that. What is chi? ठीक है, chi क्या होता है? How does note how Konko dies? Anoka dies. And what kind of burial he is given. That's very very important. ठीक है, the more important a person is, the better burial they are given. और आप देखेंगे कि अनोका को किस तरह का उन्होंने दिया. The burial is also ठीक है very important, since it like so many other things tells us about Anoka's peripheral status. In his village, and his clansmen's perception of him as a failure. The whole affair of Anoka's burial seems to have been greatly imprinted upon Akonko's psyche, since he takes it to be an ultimate humiliation. Take a note again that his father's pathetic life as well as his death greatly influences Akonko's overall personality and his life choices. Right? Okay, and we get to see the textual evidence of that as well. With a father like Anoka, Akonko did not have the start which many young men had. He neither inherited a barn nor a title nor even a young wife. But in spite of these disadvantages, he had begun, even in his father's lifetime, to lay the foundation of a prosperous life. It was slow and painful, but he threw himself into it like one possessed. This is also a very very important word. Why is he called possessed? Okay, although हम कह सकते हैं कि it is a metaphoric thing, he is called that symbolically, but nothing is without a reason. Okay, and writers, they play on words very carefully. तो ये देखें कि possessed का क्या है significance यहाँ पे. He was possessed by the fear of his father's contemptible life and shameful death. Right? तो ये important है. Then who is Nawabiki and why does Akonko go to him? ये सारा incident पढ़े, and how Nawabiki treats Akonko. ठीक है, और उसमें जो customs हैं वो भी दिखाए जा रहे हैं कि when Nawabiki sits there and his wives come and they give him something to drink and things like that. So read that carefully. आपको उसके culture के ऊपर आ सकता है सवाल. And I can also ask you why Achebe has given such importance to the cultural depiction. Right? Okay. Why does Akonko think that year was the worst year in living memory? क्या reason था उसका? ठीक है, how does he react to the hardship that he is confronted with? वो भी क्या है? What's happening in this chapter? ठीक है, आप basically ये पढ़िए और देखिए कि what's the reason? Why does he feel so bad about the ongoing year? Right? ये सारी चीजें. What does this tell us about the character? That year the harvest was sad like a funeral, and many farmers wept as they dug up the miserable rotting yams. One man tied his cloth to a tree branch and hanged himself. ठीक है, Akonko remembered that tragic year with a cold shiver throughout the rest of his life. It always surprised him when he thought of it later that he did not sink under the load of despair, क्योंकि obviously he had actually taken yams from Nawabiki. ठीक है, तो उसको था कि I need to get a good harvest, but उस साल बारिशें इतनी लेट हुई और ये सारी चीज़ें, तो he was a bit worried. ठीक है, तो क्या हुआ? How did he overcome his hardship? What happened? ये आपको डिटेल में पढ़ना है. And what does that show about our character? That is also very important, right? He knew that he was a fierce fighter, but the year had been enough to break the heart of a lion. And then when he's thinking about it, he says, since I survived that year, he always said, I shall survive anything. यहाँ पे हमें सोचने वाली बात है कि यहाँ पे will he survive anything? ठीक है, ये बहुत बड़ा claim है ना कि I can survive anything. ठीक है, when we are strong, when we when we think that we are undefeated, तो हम बहुत सारे इस तरह के claims करते हैं, ठीक है. तो फिर लेकिन जब बाद में ज़िंदगी हमें बहुत सारे चीज़ें दिखाती है तो हमें पता चलता है कि हमारे claims कितने meaningless थे, ठीक है. So ये भी हम देखेंगे बाद में कि what does his fate have in store for him, ठीक है. Is this claim right? He put it down to his inflexible will. उसने कहा क्योंकि मैं इतना strong हूँ तो इसलिए मैंने ये you know I have faced it like a man, ठीक है, और बाकी लोग इतना face नहीं कर सके. Is it true as well? बाद में क्या होगा क्या नहीं होगा, we will get to see that, right? So for now this is it. Read the chapters thoroughly and you can come up with your own analysis as well, और फिर उसको हम बाद में डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. So you're welcome to ask any questions if you have any. And that is it for today. Allah Hafiz.